Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we're doing a planner 911 rescue. Something a little different, but using the supplies we have in a different way. So I got this weekly planner pad from a dollar store up here. And I thought, this is really great. We can do our menu planning on it. But you know what? It's pretty blah and boring. And well, I'm Creative Katie, so I think I could do better than this. So I got out my wooden stamps and I stamped the dates and I put the month there, and that made it a little bit better, but still kind of boring, right? I dug out some stamps and put some stamps on it, but again, not exactly creative. Let's modify this. So I looked at my distress inks. Now I only got about 15 colors here, and I don't use these often, so I like the idea of using them. And I'm going to use the new TCW layered stencils. Now these are intended for A4 cards, which I don't really do, so I want to repurpose them. So if you have these and you're a card maker, you're going to get more use out of them. I'm also going to use some of their slimline stencils. Again, intended to be used for cards, but don't let that limit you. Let's look for ways to use and reuse these things. So I grabbed this one. I think it's called Hydrangea Bouquet, and it's one of their layered stencils. And I'm picking the distress colors. Now I'm doing distress instead of acrylic paints here because I can write on top of it. I can also, it's also quick and easy. There's no drying time. It's not going to warp the paper. And, you know, my goal is to make this a little bit fancier as it's sitting on my fridge, but not do a whole lot of work. So with the layered stencils, each part is done separately. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and you simply switch the sections. Now, while this is intended for an A2 card, I'm just going to put it across the page. 2 of them works perfectly on this 11.5 by 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So you pick your first color, and here I'm going in with mowed lawn, and then I'm also going over top of it with faded jeans. And that gives a different tone of green. So don't be afraid to mix your distress colors. Remember, I only have a limited amount. Now I'm coming in with the color Shaded Lilac. It reminds me of the hydrangea color. And this is the part 2. I've realized that I need to tape the stencil down so it doesn't move. Holding it down just wasn't working for me, and I was getting a little bit of movement. Now, using distress inks in this way through a stencil is not something I do often. But as I progress through this video, through the 6 or 7 pages that I did get better at it, and I got some ideas. So this is the number 2 part. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. There are guidelines there that you can use to get the perfect fit on an A2 size card. Now I'm not trying to get even coverage, and as you can see, I'm using the Ranger blending foams. I don't have the blending brushes. You don't need to use it. I've even used a makeup sponge later on. Use what you have. Don't let that stop you that you don't have all of the best supplies, or what we see as or think are the best supplies. So that's number 2. Number 3, I come in, I believe, with wilted, oh, no, I think this one is faded jeans. And I realize that I can't put the tape on top of the distress ink, so I'm going to wipe it off with a baby wipe in between. That way I don't get it on other things. I'm loving how this looks. I love hydrangeas, and And as I look at this, this would make a nice border, top and bottom or sides of an art journal page. So just by using these stencils, putting ink through them, they're giving me ideas for use. Then I'm coming in with, I believe, Mermaid Lagoon on top. Positioning it, taping it down, and then inking. So I'm quite happy with this. So let's move on to the rose banner. Now, as I use these different stencils, maybe it'll give you an idea of what this looks like, so you can make a better decision about whether this is something that you want to add to your stash. Sometimes we just need to see it in action. So again, the artist has done, the designer has done the job. They've separated all the elements. So all we have to do is just ink number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, choosing the colors. Now, if you didn't want to go straight on the planner page, you could have attempted or tried it out to see if you like the color combos on page. This is Mode Lawn. Actually, not Mode Lawn was what I used. This one is Fossilized Amber. And I'm using Abandoned Coral with it. I want that corally yellow color rose. Now these are just the colors I use. The next time I'm going to use different colors. And like I said at the beginning, I only have about 15 colors of distress or distress oxides. I don't have the full gamut of colors. I don't think I have one pink. So I'm making do with what I have. Now I'm coming in for this third section with Fired Brick. But as I do this, I'm getting ideas for ways to use it on my art journal and even other ideas for different color combos. But all the highlights and lowlights are done for you with the stencil. They even have a lot of winter and Christmas and seasonal layered stencils. So I can keep going with my planner using all those stencils. But I'm not limited just to those. So I'm using, again, Faded Jeans with Mowed Lawn. So you get a little bit of that green, and then with the blue, it makes a different color green. Because really, I only have the one green. And there we have it with the rose banner. So let's move on. This one is, I believe, the layered daisy banner. So again, we start with number 1, and it's typically the leaves. Reallocating the stencil, lining it up, eyeballing it, taping it down to help yourself. Wiping it clean so you don't have it. Now, the cover of the stencil when you buy it has each part shown, and they give an example of using it. Another thing that TCW it has are the tutorials that show the layered stencils and the different stencils being used with different mediums, with stencil butters, with inks. So if you're starting out and you're not sure how to best utilize these, that's a great place to go. So I've used Wilted Violet here on this daisy. I chose to not go the typical daisy color. And as you see, I'm not even trying to be perfectly opaque with this or covered. I want variations, lights and dark. So I'm putting a little more ink on some places. Now this is Wilted Violet. the blues and purples go really well together. And this is just an attempt. I'm trying it out. I like how this looked. Maybe I don't. It's a planner sheet. At the end of the week, it goes in the garbage. It's a great place to try out your stencils and get more use out of them. And, you know, in this session, I did, 7, 8 pages of my daily planner. Here I'm just using archival ink because I don't have a black in distress, and I wanted that contrast. I wanted the center to be black. I love how this turned out. This one is, I think, my favorite. Now I'm using a slimline stencil. This one's called Meadow, and I'm just isolating different parts of it. Now, this isn't separated into the 4 sections for you, but I found that even if there was overlap, it added and enhanced the final product. So just isolate it as best you can with your blending foam, with your blending brush, with a makeup sponge. If that's all you've got, that's fine. It all works. If you're liking the storage that I have with the blending foams for my Distress Oxide, I'll link the video where I talk about that organizational tool. I'm just picking different colors and filling it in, trying to isolate it as much as possible, but I'm not worrying about overlap. If you're wondering what I'm using as a applicator here, putting the blending foams on, those are teacher stamps from my teaching days that I've taken off the stamp and put Velcro on. This one's called Shell Collection, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to, each of the elements, I'm going to give it a different color or blend of colors, and you'll see how beautiful it is. And if you're thinking, but Karen, I can use any stencil to decorate my planner, you're absolutely right. You can. So it's just another use for something that you already have. And I love when we can do that, when we can take what we have and use it in a different manner. I could do this one on multiple pages, change up the colors constantly. This one's called Sunflower Friends. I'm not sure what the second part of it is. It's a slim line, but it goes vertical. So I'm just going to put one of them on the page. My goal is to have something pretty while it's on my fridge, but it doesn't have to be all over. And again, you can take a ballpoint pen and write over top of the Distress ink without any problem. I'm adding a little bit of brown. There's a picket fence down below. And as you can see, some of that is overlapping on the green. But when you take it off, it looks like you've done a masterful job and you've blended the colors. So I'm really happy that I use stencils that I wouldn't typically be using in an unconventional type way. And I'm using my Distress inks and my Distress Oxides, which I love, but I don't use a lot of in my art journaling because they are water activated and I like working with permanent. Here I'm just blending the colors, the yellow, the orange, and a little bit of brown, a little bit of coral on there, and it makes a perfect sunflower. Then I lined them up and I gave all the pages a splatter of gold. Just another little enhancement. This kind of blocks off any messes that you might have had, a little ink where it shouldn't have gone. And it just adds a little bling. I like it. Now let's look at them. Meadow, Seashell Collection, Hydrangea Banner, that's one of the layered stencils, Rose Banner, another layered one, Sunflower Friends, and Layered Daisy. I hope I've given you some ideas of ways to use your stash. Until next time, go get creative.